Good morning. Thank you for joining the May 24th, 2018 VOLTHA call. And just a reminder to everyone, we do record these sessions, so keep that in mind during any discussions or presentations, and we will post this later to the VOLTHA playlist on YouTube. And with that, I think we'll get started for the day. First topic for today is going over the new and recent JIRAs that have been opened. And so I will start with 806 roughly is where we had left off last time.
Yeah, that's done. 806.
And yeah, that one is done. Okay. So I think we can move on to the next one, 807. And is Shad, let's see. I don't see Shad on yet. So this is one of the OpenOLT items for Ubuntu 16.04, adding support for that. And so that's verifying that it works on that build as well. Any
I
questions?
think that one require Edge Core to compile the patch or something like that. I think right now Edge Core is still 1406, 1404. So, okay. Yeah, you see the build currently works on Ubuntu 1404, need to verify it. So I think Edge Core need to be involved. Is Jason on?
I don't see Jason on.
Okay, then I think what we can, I'll send the note to Jason here.
Okay, thank you. Other questions on this item? So thank you for that, Sean. And then next one, I want to go to 1808. Looks like it's probably already closed, but let's see if we can navigate to it here. And this is a defect that was opened and fixed for the OpenOLT adapter again. So remove sleeps between flow adds. So that item is done. Do we have any questions from the group on this particular issue? Okay, then the next one, 1809. This one is, oh, actually, Sean, I wanted to go back to 1807 here. So do we know if, okay, so I do see this is in a 2.0. Do you know if this one is being looked at for Sprint 2?
No,
we need to check
I think they just started. So once the Edge Core provided new patch, then it should be okay.
Okay.
I don't think they're not targeted to Sprint 2 or not, but let's skip. As I said, I'll write it to Jason and see whether they can provide quickly.
All right. And then, so it sounds like for that one, we may need to have a related JIRA opened up as well for the Edge Core portion of it.
Or subtask.
For a subtask, yes. Okay.
One thing I'm not sure is, because that's if the Edge Core fixed it, then is Kim on it? Kim is someone from Redis on. Amit?
Sean, this is Amit. Yeah.
Okay.
Please repeat the question.
The A07 is talking about the Ubuntu 1604.
Okay.
Does Edge Core OLT your driver has the same issue?
I need to check with the team and get back. I'll update the Vol 807 with the update.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
I just wonder what is that. This is not just the OpenOLT issue. Could be
Sure.
Okay. So we'll do some follow-up with that. And then 809, this is another defect that was opened last week. Simulated OLT fails to create logical device. This one is in
I think Amit, you need to mute.
Thanks, John, and thanks, Amit. Ken, so this item shows in progress.
Yeah, this I believe this code is submitted. I will need to double check.
Okay, and actually I may have had that on the agenda. I believe it actually was merged. So I was wondering if we need to move this one to Sprint 2. I'm guessing we do since the code's been submitted. And then I'll let you confirm if this can be closed out after.
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
sure.
thank you. So I'll move it to Sprint 2 after our meeting today. And then let me see if I can get to 810. Looks like that one is already closed as well, but we'll review it with the group. Add NNI port to PONSIM v2 OLT. And so this was a task that was opened related to an epic on updating PONSIM v2. And I don't know if, let's see.
This is Jono. That task is underway right now. It's in progress.
Okay. So do you think this one will complete in Sprint 2 then? Should we move this?
Yeah, I think it should complete in the Sprint 2.
Okay. Thank you. And let me go to the next item. Okay, and it changed my view here. Get back. Okay, let me try and get back. There we go. Okay, so 811 Broadband Sim is a broadband access simulator that can be used for functional and scale testing. And let me see if we've got Saurav on. Don't see him, or is Kato. Keita, I think you are on. I don't know if you want to talk about this epic or if you want Saurav or someone else to talk about this item. Or I'll just, oops. This is one that is for emulate, just for the control traffic. So it's not emulating the data plane traffic. And so this is for simulation of control communication between a large scale for the PON. And so this item is has several issues, has a few issues in it, I think. So I did have a question, I think it was out to Saurav. I don't know if anyone else on this call can answer. I don't know if this item is related to the scope item we had here for discussion on simulator plans for 2.0. I don't know if it's related to that or if it's just a separate issue.
Yeah, I think it is related to that.
Okay.
I think
so then
this is discuss a little modified PONSIM or develop new simulator, yeah. And I think the resolution was that we want to develop a new simulator for the scale testing.
Okay, thank you.
And Jeffrey is also involved on this one, right? Jeffrey Van?
No, this is Keita from NTT. So Jeffrey is working on PONSIM, which is the existing session emulator because it can forward data plane traffic. But this task is related to the simulator, which there's no data plane emulation or anything like that. It's just simulating high scale of ONUs and OLTs.
Okay.
Okay. So then hopefully today we can assign the technical lead for that item, and then we can start populating the list of contributors as well and get Kate on that list also. Okay, so thank you for that update. Any questions from the group before we move on to the next item? All right, next 812, this is a new defect that came out of some testing for an older issue. So if fiber is pulled at the ONU side, the ONU LOS alarm will not get the clear from the Kafka bus, but the ONU state is then changed to active. Okay, so this item, Venkata, I believe I saw you on the call and you were working on this issue as well. And do we have any comments from either you or from the group?
I'm trying to get the best approach for this. I'm trying. I'm trying to. I'm working on this right now. So I don't have the edge core set up yet, but I'm looking into that. So I think we have a meeting today or tomorrow with Chip and Don. So we'll discuss on this approach. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Any questions from anyone else in the group?
Venkata, so are we try to get this fixed in sprint 2? That's sprint 2 ends on June 6th.
Right. Yeah. We can try that.
Okay.
All right, then 813 is another, this is one of the stories for Broadband Sim. And so, Jono, I don't know if you wanted to give any more feedback. I think you gave a high-level description of the epic itself. Any questions from the group on this story for Broadband Sim? Okay, and for this item, do we know if this is going to be targeted for Sprint 2?
Yes, this issue is part of Broadband Simulator.
Okay, I'll move this to Sprint 2. Thank you. And then we have the next issue, which is also related to that as well, the state machine for Broadband Simulator. And so that will be Sprint 2 as well?
I think so.
Okay, that's the target then. Thank you.
You go, Keita-san.
Thanks so much. Sure. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, and then the next item we have is 815. This was a defect on OpenOLT driver, errors when installing Deb. And so this one I think is not currently assigned to a sprint. So I think this one is a future item.
Jono, should this one be fixed before 1.4 release?
I don't know anything about this one, so I don't know how critical it is.
Okay. But he put in as very low priority. Maybe those errors just coming up without affecting the installation.
Yeah, possibly. And it may be part of the actual Deb itself rather than the VOLTHA code base, so it may be external to the code base. But I'm not really sure.
What's the journal number? 816.
815.
815. Okay.
All right, and then the next item is complete. This is another defect opened on the OpenOLT driver. Remove ID config step from startup. And so that item is complete in Sprint 2. So do we have any questions on this one? Okay, so 817 is another defect on OpenOLT, errors on ONU console, ingress class for key already configured. This one has the lowest priority. So Sean, I think your same discussion with John would take place on which of the OpenOLT defects need to be included for the proposed 1.4 release. And then if they are needed, then they probably need to go in Sprint 2. But I'll let ONF look at those offline and make a call on that. Okay, questions from the group? Okay, then next we have a new batch of epics and user stories related to the security discussions that were held previously with Tom Moore. So Tom, I think what I'm going to do is try and decide if we have, I don't know if we have time to cover them all in detail today. I was thinking maybe I can have you give just a quick overview since it's related to the presentation that you had given previously. And then if we need more detailed discussion with the group, then we can maybe slot that into one of the next meetings. Does that sound all right? Tom Moore, are you on?
I don't see him
I
on.
saw him online.
Oh, yes,
So
he's on.
he may be on mute. So what we'll do quickly then, I think, is if we look at these, so we had the presentations and the discussion previously, and that was around kind of looking at best practices from other open communities and applying that here. And so here you have a high level description that there would be 5 epics was the expectation of the previous meetings, and those would correspond to the organization for the ONAP DNS security. And so those epics are now in here and then have related user stories with them. So here we can just look at them all on this list, I think, for this first item. So we have this first epic, which gives the general security requirements. And I may need to go, yeah, I think let me go on to the next one as well. And then 819. You are there. Hi.
I'm covering another call, and I think I'm beyond where they need me there. So this,
okay.
I see what's on the screen here. Yeah, so these are the 5 epics in the areas that we proposed we would write as epics, and then we've written the stories for the first epic, and then the next step will be to write the stories for the other epics. Just wanted to give an example of something of how we're going and writing the stories. So you'll see that if you just stay here, I want to cover the high level. That what was on the screen there just repeats some of what was in the presentation, in that we agreed we'd create 5 epics, and then this background is just copied into all the 5 epics, 818 through 822. And then I think if there are no questions there, we can look at a couple of story examples.
Okay, so we've got the related user stories down below. Any particular one that you'd like to share?
Let's look at 823, and there is actually a story about least privilege and underneath another security epic. So we have another security epic, so there may be some duplication. We may figure out how we close one and keep the other, but I want to just say I understand that. But my approach here in general is that by default, any requirement that's a must, I am just by default making a priority of high, just so that we have a discussion on each one about whether it applies, whether it should be stay at high, whether it should be medium. But from a mapping perspective, I'm defaulting that it says must, it says high. If it says should, it's a medium. Okay, so there's some that say should, and the priorities are just set at medium for now. We can go lower or higher as needed, but by default, that there's going to be a lot of highs. Now, to go back to the list of JIRAs, and just to look at an example, let's look at 820. 828. This is an example of one where this is about possibly more environment type work, and may not have real development around it, so it might have documentation. I thought maybe this one was a should, but it's a must. But this would be an example of when we go into each one of these, is there real development, or is this an integration JIRA, or is it a one that or do we need to just document that this is the approach, and we're going to follow the security approach, and then we close out the JIRA. And I think the last one, 837, is an example of another approach of how we're writing these. So this one has multiple requirements for a certain reason. The reason is that the default requirement is the VNF would use the network cloud service provider's identity and access management API for identification, et cetera, and then the rest of them have to do with a conditional if they're not using that API. So I think this is an environment question for working with a particular network cloud service provider. And so instead of writing, individual stories on this, I think we would want to determine what's more to be done here, whether we would break this out into tasks if needed, if we were, let's say, for example, going to use another IDM for reference. I don't know that we would do that, but and this is also an example of where if we say essentially we are going to use an MCSP's IDM API, that's a point of integration really, and so we probably need to have like a reference design or document what our approach is going to be. But for what that means is that essentially you have a way to identify the users, authenticate them, and authorize what they can do. And so by default, if we deploy VOLTHA without something, then it means it needs to be customized. So we just have to understand what our approach is going to be. Now, the 4 other areas, we're going to do the same. And there'll probably be on the order of 20 or 30, depending upon whether we're combining some requirements for similar reasons as we did here.
Okay. We have questions for Tom on the approach taken here.
So Tom, I think on the first one, the least privileged one, right? So, do we have a detailed example what least privilege is, or that's a very common practice? Like for example, I think one of the example I gave to the community is never install something with a root. Have to use a sudo, things like that.
There are requirements for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot of requirements that are related to this. This is almost like a high level requirement to which a lot of other requirements are tied. This possibly it doesn't get mapped to something in detail because there are so many other requirements, like you just stated, and that are related to the IDM function. And essentially, this means having authorization levels,
right.
Authorization levels that are very controlled and known. And so I think with respect to defining what this means, I didn't put some of the definitions that I had presented in. I think there was an April TST call where we covered this topic, and
right.
I'm considering to do that in this here in more detail as we go through the discussion. Just wanted to get I didn't stop and do that. I was wanting to get a whole module's worth of requirements in, and so I'm going to follow this up. And I think every one of these are going to need questions like that. And that's a great question, and definitely in one of the other 5 epics, there are requirements around the type of things you're talking about. I think even there's a general one sort of related to it. It says that you can't leave things open by default. You have to harden the solution. So there's a requirement in this list that's related to what you were saying.
Right.
And
so I think
like that.
I wonder whether we should have a sub-team meeting just to address this one. But because I think this is a big topic to talk during the TST. One thing also, yeah. And then we can set a priority on that one, on the side. The other thing is I think the code distribution, right? So there is a existing Jira like installation of the VOLTHA without internet access, so that's sort of related to that code distribution. But if we want to deposit the code somewhere in the ONAP or eComp and then to distribute the VOLTHA source and the VOLTHA code through that way, that can be a little another implementation of this. But we do have existing requirement regarding to installation of the VOLTHA and VOLTHA suite, let's say that, without the internet access. So there are something already implemented. So though the detail like that, we do need to work it out on the site. Okay. Tom, thank you for all these input on these. Thanks for doing that.
Okay, so Sean, I think I heard you say we may need a sub-team meeting. So,
Jonathan, are you dialing someone?
So, Jonna, you may need to mute.
You can mute Jonna.
Let me mute him. Okay. All right. So right now we need to, hopefully on this call, figure out who the technical lead will be, and then who is planning to contribute to any required development work, and then also who needs to be involved in side discussions, or who would like to be involved in the sub-team meeting that you mentioned.
And the other thing is, one thing is the information provided here can be as a guideline also, right? So, so potentially when we're implementing the, I'm sure some of the making things into microservices, so there may be some of the security for the communication channel between the core and the microservices. So, I think some of them potentially just a guideline. So since Tom just put this here, let's make sure we review this one, and then are they, is everyone need to be implemented as a feature, as a, in the VOLTHA suite, or is just a guidance? So. Because I do see once we put all these in story point in there, then we would probably need 100 sprint to finish both our budget.
We're already about there, so that will be another topic for discussion. Okay, so do we have other comments today for Tom on what's been entered? And then I would encourage people to take a close look at the specific user stories offline and see those as well. So we did a kind of a quick recap of the approach here following what was agreed during the previous meeting. Okay, then I think that takes us through our first topic for today. And just we're going to clean
That's it.
That's our first topic. We've gone over the new issues. So next is going on to the updates for Sprint 2, which is currently in flight. And we've got a little bit more time on this. It goes until June 8th. So let me go over here now to different view. Oh, and some of these may have been updated afterwards. Yeah, so this one is changed to done. So the first question is actually answered. That one is done. And then let me go to the to-do and in progress items. Okay. And let me see who we've got on the phone here. Do we have ID Chip and IDC Shed? And I'm pretty sure I heard Ken earlier.
Yeah, I'm here.
There you are. Okay. All of a sudden I couldn't find your name. Okay. So let's take these. How do we want to tackle this today? Okay, so why don't we look at the, Ken, why don't we start with your issues that you have entered here? And if there are any issues that we need to discuss with the group or concerns about completion during the during the Sprint 2 timeframe for any of the planned issues today?
I know. I think the one that are in progress definitely will be done in Sprint 2.
Okay.
And the one in to-dos, because those are tasks, I couldn't find a way to put the task in different sprints. And so if they are not completed, if we get the chance to complete the one that are in progress, then we'll put more into from the to-do into in progress. Otherwise, it will move to Sprint 3.
Okay. All right. And I'm not sure if we have any further down here. I think that was it for you. Okay, so next, Chip, why don't we go on to the OpenOMCI issues? And if we could get sort of the same recap from you if we have concerns about any of the items that are targeted for Sprint 2 and any issues that need discussion with the larger group.
No, I think we're probably on pretty much schedule on being able to complete many of these. We currently have 2 of them in review right now. That once they're complete, there's 2 more that have been completed that I can issue reviews on. It's just sort of they sometimes touch the same files, so it's just a matter of upping them through the process.
All right. So I forgot to ask if there are any questions from the community back to Ken on the issues being worked for Sprint 2. So let me jump back to that quickly. Okay, doesn't sound like it. So then on the OpenOMCI, on the work in progress in Sprint 2, any questions back to Chip for today? All right, then our next main item we have in this one is the OpenOLT adapter. So let me go on to Shad and see if I can get a status update from you on the items in the Sprint and any concerns that need to be discussed with the group.
So no, I think we're looking good. I don't know if Nick from AT&T Foundries is here online, but yeah, the Foundry team has come on board, and I think we've got things covered. There is yeah, so we're going to I'll be pulling in a few more stories into Sprint 2, and I think we're looking good.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions from the group back to Shad?
Yes. One question, Shad. We are the OpenOLT is using 2.4, the Bell Bill 2.4.6. something, right? So, how long are we planning to stay in the older release of the Bell and then Broadcom software?
So yeah, I need to check with my Broadcom account. We were trying to work out with Broadcom a license. It had expired, and that's the reason we were not able to access the later SDK. We are working that thing out. We're working it out with Broadcom, and yeah, as soon as we get access to the software, I'll make a transition to make that transition happen. So maybe either this sprint or the next sprint, definitely.
Yeah, because if we want to see whether there's a chance to converge the SF, the original edge core adapter and the OpenOLT adapter, I think we probably do need to have a same code base, right? So
yes. So let me. I don't even have a Jira for that work item. I'll have a story for that, and let me follow up with Broadcom and get back to the community with a target date.
Right.
Hey Sean, could you just expand a little bit on this merging the edge core adapter with the OpenOLT? Is that a work item?
That's a not work item, but exploration item. Or we do want to see whether, because right now we have 2 different teams working on basically almost the same thing, right? So if the OpenOLT can catch up to where the edge core OLT is, I'm just hoping we can converge, but maybe there are other reasons we don't want to do that. But I think that's as an effort we need to see what's the delta and what any possibility for converging both of them into one. So that's the effort. I think for the community that will be the better approach. So in the meantime, I think that's one of the items we actually discussed, during the lockdown, right? We want to see the delta.
So I think the exploration of the delta, I think that definitely is good. So we see the differences between the two adapters at this point. So I did want to point out the outcome we had as the follow-up from the April lockdown was that Radisys is planning to maintain the existing adapter, and that was at least the status at that time. I think that's still the status with the work we have planned for the coming sprints as well. So
that's right.
So Sean, let's see which Sean. So Sean Missett, is there anything else you want to add to that, or?
Well, so this was like just the first time I'd heard of this the merging approach. Maybe is that something we should have some kind of meeting discussions around, or?
Yeah, because I think it was tossed around as an idea at the lockdown, and then we had the agreement that Radisys was going to continue to maintain the existing adapter for Edge Core at this point. And so if we're reinvestigating that as a group, I do think, Sean, Sean Ying, like you mentioned, knowing the deltas between the two is good. So we have a sense of the capabilities of each and the maturity level of each. But then probably would be a larger group discussion for anything beyond that.
Right. I think that topic came up is in the operators meeting. Right. But again, I think we do need to know the delta. So, and at least the OpenOLT need to catch up, right? So if we bring up to the same level playing field, and then the community will decide what they want to do. So.
Yeah, and there's obviously a different, I guess, architectural spin between the two, right? The OpenOLT has more of the execution down on the physical OLT versus the edge core adapter, which is more, in the compute side of things, right? Not on the physical OLT. So when we merge, I mean, it would basically be taking capability from the edge core adapter and putting it on the physical OLT itself, right?
Mm-hmm. I think let's it's just some question, and some service provider has question about. So I think as a community we do need to provide some kind of feedback, right? So maybe I come into the conclusion too fast about converging, but it is using double resource to develop the same OLT, adapter, right? So
yeah.
Yeah. So Sean, I had taken an action item of coming up with a feature list, and sort of a parity matrix. Just so for the OpenOLT, I needed to get a view of what are the features that are in and what are missing. So I'll come up with that and send it out, and maybe the Radisys team can verify that I've really I've covered all the features, and that the support of yes or no is I'm being honest. So yeah, I'll do that in the next couple of days.
Yeah. If you could involve Amit in that'd be great.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. And then let me go back. I think we still have a few more issues to get back to. I hadn't finished everything. And let me actually take Jono off of mute. Okay.
I'm here.
Hi, Jono. Sorry we had to put you on mute for a bit there.
Yeah,
so
no,
Sean, Sean Miss it while I've got you on the phone here also, if we could get a quick update on, well, actually, I don't know who, maybe I should have Jono talk about the technology profile work in this sprint, because I think you're the one who has the open items right now for technology profiles for sprint 2.
Right, yeah, I think the items that I have are related to the META support in VOLTHA, in the OF agent of VOLTHA. So we need to add the ability for that to understand META messages coming from ONOS and to then push them down to the core. I think at this point the core doesn't even support meters, so I'm not sure actually if there's a dependency on another task before we can actually do this one in the OF agent. I don't know, Sean missed it if you have another task for that.
Shall I miss that?
Sorry, I was talking to myself. But so yeah, so there may be a story that kind of touches on that. Let me take a look. I'll send you an email later on.
Okay, go.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other thing related to that, related to META support, is that, you know, we also discussed in, say, the status record, there's going to be something that defines a bandwidth profile for the upstream and for the downstream traffic flow for a given subscriber. Now, is that...
I thought that was a proposal, not a done deal yet, wasn't it?
Well, I think something has to drive the META messages, right? So somewhere, something has to specify, you know, the bandwidth profiles, right?
Right. The question was that going to be on a per technical profile, and it was kind of hard-coded profile, or was it a separate profile?
Oh, I thought it was going to be separate.
That was kind of what was proposed. I didn't know there had been kind of a decision made on that.
Oh, I guess just in my mind, I guess.
Okay.
But okay, so is that something that's going to be discussed in the near future, or should we have a meeting on that? Because it seems like there's something like Mike's presentation yesterday has some reference to that as well, right? Defining the services, and there has to be some relationship between the services and what the bandwidth profiles are going to be.
I mean, yeah. I mean, what I had presented was a concept in the management domain, and wherever the management domain sits, you would want to be able to tie some description of service into some concrete meter values, and I was proposing a type of profile that would be able to set all the concrete details of the meter values, and then whenever the service was created, you would apply the technology profile as the service order dictated, and then select the proper metering speed profile and pass that into ONOS, VOLTHA, whatever the right passing in place is. That would have to eventually get down to VOLTHA in terms of applying a meter properly.
Okay, so I guess that was what you were mentioning, David, was the you know, where does that manifest itself, I guess, in the configuration path of VOLTHA?
Yeah, and does that become another kind of entry into etcd on some other index, much like technical profiles? I don't know. I haven't really thought
Yeah,
through it.
I thought that was an OpenFlow. I thought that was an OpenFlow thing that just came down in the metering values of the OpenFlow request. It wasn't that part of OpenFlow, the meters.
Yeah.
I admit that I don't know very well. I got the impression from the meeting. So for me, this is writing above VOLTHA. I think this is writing above VOLTHA in this management application that is what it is, its own separate application, or as part of NEMS or CEBA or whatever, wherever it ends up residing. I think the definition of that profile is above the VOLTHA. I don't know that the VOLTHA knows the profiles themselves. I assume those are coming down as meters. And the caveat that I put to that was if there was a different technology like G.fast that really required different types of profile changes, I would assume that would then become a separate technology profile that would push a separate speed profile that would have information in it like a technology profile, and that would have to have another index. But that would be for a future technology. That would be something for, I don't think that's for PON. So when I put that on the slide, I was not implying that was for PON. I was implying the potential need for that type of idea in the future. So sorry.
Okay, so that says to me that it belongs in status with the other information, I guess, for device information. Some reference to.
That was kind of what we were thinking anyway, initially, or I was anyway, initially. And then that would would essentially generate the OpenFlow meter band configuration.
The question then becomes, is this something that's set on per subscriber or referenced per subscriber? Is there a bandwidth profile that I explicitly state up and downstream on a per port, or do I on per port say, hey, I have bandwidth profile X, and those are defined elsewhere?
I think it'd be more scalable to do that as define a certain kind of service, perhaps. I mean, obviously the operators have a better handle on that, but it seems like that's kind of what's commonly done, is I create a profile and reference that profile.
Yeah, so then it becomes where that resides.
I was proposing that it resided in the management app, and I don't know where the technical implementation of that management app is, but I was presuming that the management app, container, service, microservice, whatever it becomes, it needs to have persistency and needs to have needs to be holding those types of things there.
So then the question is, fine, that's in the management app. When it manifests itself in ONOS, so ONOS can push down the proper meters, ONOS can either kind of go to status, which is kind of per subscriber record, and get the idea of the bandwidth profile and use some other mechanism to look that up, or you could say the management app is pushing per profiles down to ONOS to be managed. And I think Sean rightly pointed out, that means it's probably not as clean to have it, the numbers per port, per subscriber. It's better to have a reference, but I'm not sure. We haven't defined where or how that reference would be turned into actual numbers for the meters.
So
I agree. We haven't. I agree. We haven't defined that.
We've only got 9 minutes left, so I'm getting the sense we need perhaps a separate meeting to go over this. Sean, David, Mike, is that your view as well?
I would like.
I
would like a proposal on how whoever wants to go do it, suggest how we do this, right? Rather than just have a meeting, let's talk about it. If someone could say, hey, I'm going to write an email and put a proposal together, so that we have a targeted conversation, as opposed to let's get together and stare at each other.
I know that I have a task to turn my slides into user stories, and maybe the point when those things become user stories, then if there's someone who is more into the technical pieces of ONOS and Volta and everything, we work through an implementation from the user stories, I guess, maybe is the right way to go. I mean, I know that I need to turn what I've I know I need to turn what I presented into user stories. I know that's one of the tasks that I'm working on.
Okay, so I think, Mike, we'll let you keep working on that, and in the interest of time, I'm going to jump back. I was hoping to get to looking at trying to find owners for some defects and also review status of some defects that are not covered by the main topics we talked about today for Sprint 2. I don't think we have time to do that, so I'm going to jump back to the agenda. So I think, okay, I think we're not going to get to any of this on the agenda today. So that kind of brings me to a topic I wanted to bring up today. So we have an issue in that we do not have enough meeting time with the group to go over kind of the sprint planning and some other things. I've been trying to consolidate time by checking in with the technical leads for the main items rather than diving into each JIRA specifically, but it means we get less discussion with the group as well. I want to know if that's working for folks to try and reduce the time, or if we need the detailed dives into the specific JIRAs while the sprint is going on for the group. Is there any feedback from the group on that?
Right. I mean, from my perspective, there's certain areas like we were just discussing that would benefit from a discussion, an architectural discussion around, how is that going to fit into the system? I mean, so I think it'd be good to have some focused discussion time, guided, as David was saying, by at least a proposal, right?
I agree. And so right now we've been limited to one or less meeting a week pretty much with time for the sprint discussion. So and I think we're reaching the point where that's not going to work. So right now we have a brief, this one should only be about 15 minutes on Tuesday. We have another request for a time slot which would take the rest of the hour Tuesday. So I may have to ask Sarah if we can put this at a different time, and I think we need to find more meeting time for the group. Either we have to move the additional items like overviews and some of the technical discussions to a different time, or we need to extend the duration of the meetings. We talked about that before for the Thursday meetings as an option. So do we have any view from the group on where we can carve out some time to address the sprint issues so we can get the group discussion that we need to take place? Because right now we don't have sufficient time. Would extending the Thursday calls work if it's free on the Cord calendar? Because we used to hold it 8 to 9 Pacific, we now do it 7 to 8. If we added 30 minutes on Thursdays, if we check the Cord calendar, would that work?
Let's just do that, and then if people cannot, so then they drop out.
We'll do that to help. Yes.
Quick thought, Julie. I mean, I think that's fine. I think that we reached a point where, and we've done this a few times to my knowledge, but we need separate meetings, just impromptu meetings, or separate meetings to be called when a topic needs to be discussed by a smaller group, smaller part of a group, a subset, and you just figure out the times that works. It may be 3 or 4 people, it may be 7 or 8 people, and you just figure that out as you need like we need a meeting to discuss what Sean is describing here, and David. And that gives you, it buys you a lot of extra time with a lot less conflict.
I think that will help, because then it lets us get through the items we need to talk about related to sprint planning and getting updates on issues and resolving things related to proposed paths forward for resolution of defects and so forth. So we'll plan to extend the meetings on Thursdays starting next week. So Sean, I'll ask probably for your help, Sean Ying, on checking the Cord calendar to see if that can happen. And then if I can have folks help contact me if they know of an issue that needs to be brought up with a separate meeting. I can help coordinate meetings if needed. And then just quickly, since I've got 3 minutes left, these are items that were on for discussion last week, and we did not have time to discuss them. And I did not get feedback from the community over email. So I'm putting the plea out again for backlog review of specific items where we need feedback from the community on what to do for these. So for example, 464, do we still want to support Docker Swarm mode with console? If not, then I think this ticket gets closed. If so, then we need to look at that. And then there's also one item, 670, which has been waiting for a couple of weeks for review in Garrett. So if people can take a look at those, since we don't have time to discuss them during the meeting today, and then also take a look at the material that was sent out by Cambridge Industries for their discussion next week. They would like to be involved with the VOLTHA work. And then I'll send out an updated list for here. We have 2 minutes. And so Sean, we may need to set up just an entirely separate meeting for release planning. So we do have some updates from the breakout meeting we had on technology profiles earlier this week. So the common work, I don't think we have a sense of how many sprints that's going to take yet at this point. And there still needs to be further discussion on how things are going to be handled for a lot of that. We do have an estimate on the rework of the edge core adapter and what that will do for reworking it for the 2.0 approach, supporting technology profiles, supporting bottom-up discovery, and then this work is not expected to start until sprint 3 and likely will take approximately 6 sprints to complete. So I think with the dates that have been proposed for when people are trying to get a release done, we're thinking we may have to go to a 2.0, 2.1 type of approach for some of the functionality. We still have the security items are starting to be entered for the epics and user stories. David Bainbridge, I wanted to check with you also on the log management. We're trying to get started on that work in sprint 2. You had the info on the wiki. I think you had some discussion this week with
not yet, but yes.
Oh, not yet. Okay, so discussion is pending with one of the folks that had contacted you or wanted to discuss this. So, so Sean, I don't know if you have any items you want to bring up there or not, but just to point out also, we still do need to find technical leads for a number of these areas. So security, I think this is at the point where we could hopefully get a technical lead assigned. I think in the past, our module owners have been from Siena, so I'm not sure what the plan will be for the security work. But since we have some user stories and epics created, I think it's time to start getting that work looked at and see who we have as a resource to pick up that. And then also we have the other items. So if we have volunteers for any of these technical lead items, please contact me so I can update our resource list. And then we'll see how that goes. And I am out of time. So again, please review the items that were on the agenda. Let me see if I can get back to the agenda. So please review those. Look at the specific things I called out for backlog review and other ones as well, of course. And then if there's anyone who can pull in work on defects for sprint 2, that would be great. We had no time to review those. And then I think that's all we can do today, and we'll see how it goes next week. I think I'm going to try to defer the proposed agenda topic for Tuesday to Thursday so that we can have some time to follow up on the sprint related items on Tuesday's call. I think we need to do that at this point. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and close the bridge. Last comments from anyone before I do that? Okay, thanks everyone.
Thanks.